What's up, everyone? It's your boy Shaft, aka That Mill Guy, coming at you with another interview from a Toronto local, a resident, a Nami aficionado from the local scene. I had to showcase him. Matt, you're joining us on the channel for an interview with a recent top finish at a regionals, which I'm going to get you to talk about here. A radio host himself, one who probably may not love to listen to his own voice as much as I do mine, but you know, as fellow personalities, we can make that work. So Matt, introduce yourself, talk to me about Nami. Let's talk Mill.
So my name is Matt, also GTA_Nami on Twitter. I've been maining Nami for time now, since release in OPO3. I played Magic a lot growing up, like 2010, 2011, started playing Magic, played pretty consistently for a few years, then kind of took a big break from TCGs, came back to Magic, I want to say COVID boredom. I think that's when I started coming back to Magic, and my favorite set of all time, Return to Ravnica. That block of Standard was the best, and my buddy told me about Pioneer, so I got back into Pioneer, and then I got tired of going turn 2 Thalia, getting it blown up by Blood Tithe Harvester, then Fabled. So now I started playing One Piece with a couple of really close family friends because Magic was getting a little stale. And then I saw Nami, and I built Nami because it was the cheapest deck. It was like, I think when I built it, I bought it all online for $50. That was including tax. And then I just fell in love with this game. It's the best TCG I've ever played. It's amazing.
Well, okay, so a lot of points to touch on there. So yes, Nami is actually surprisingly a meta deck that's so budget. I still think the only expensive card is Love Beam, and that's dropped too. Like, it used to be 20, I think it's like 10 or 15 now too. So the deck is even cheaper. So if anyone wanted a big brain deck, I mean, Matt's bringing up the right points there. But as a Magic player myself, I'm not a Pioneer player, but that playline that you just described sounds miserable. I'm not a big fan of mid-range red enchantments that absolutely take over the game as well, as that's a universal problem everywhere. But yeah, no. But I will say I do enjoy Thalia's taking the bin. But in terms of playing some Mill, talk to me about, you know, as an OG playing from the beginning. I guess you've been playing from, if not OPO3, maybe from release. Talk to me about, you know, your experience with Nami. How was it when you first picked it up? And then maybe talk to me about right now with your kind of top finish here. What was that transformation like?
So I started playing One Piece, I want to say in late July, late August of 2023. It could have been earlier. My friends were harassing me to play it earlier, but I was like, no, I'm in Magic right now. And then I started playing with Katakuri, and I'm like, oh, this deck is sweet. But then I wanted to build my own deck, so I was using all my friends' cards. So I built Nami, and I built it, and I was having the most miserable time with the deck. I didn't understand how this deck could win it all. I think I've put in hundreds and hundreds of reps of it, and then I started to like cook with it. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Pitching Impel with Gavels, and it's like actually winnable. And then the Toronto event was my first ever major event. Just been playing Nami consistently at locals, going X1 over and over again. And then I took it to the tournament and said, you know what? I'm here. I just want 5 wins. I had very low expectations. And then before I knew it, I was 6-0 and having the time of my life playing Nami. It's so fun.
Yeah. Okay. And so with that experience, I mean, you were playing this deck in the trenches, like OPO3, beginning of like a kind of early on, the Red Menace, you know, Law everywhere. Like, yeah, Katakuri was there and NL was there, but you know, the Sakazuki Menace, the black, blue control, whatever colors you might want to think of, were not in the game yet. So how did you find a way to love this game? What was your big key in moment to say, I still want to play this game, play this deck in such a tough meta? Right now, there's plenty of reasons. Look, if your meta is just yellow everywhere, you know, you're swimming. What made you want to stick with this deck?
I think in Magic, I love to mill, and then in One Piece, milling was also kind of fun. And I think what I pride myself on in these games, and just kind of like whether it be sports or whatever in life, I'm fine losing. I'm a good loser. So I understand that this deck was going to take practice and practice and practice. And I was fine losing. And then eventually you just like kind of learn the play patterns. It was pretty miserable when Zoro and RG Law were everywhere.
Yeah.
Even Whitebeard was pretty brutal, even though it's not that bad anymore. But it definitely felt at times hopeless. I was like, what am I doing playing this deck? Like, I just wasted $50 on playing this. But if you just like keep practicing it, you'll learn the lines to win. But it was really tough at the start. And now with Sakazuki and Anel and Katakuri being kind of everywhere, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing I like to stress to folks as well. I'm doing like a mini coaching session for someone later this week as well. And one of the points that I've definitely written down to highlight is, at the end of the day, some of what you're doing comes down to a lot of randomness. Like in a lot of games, you need your triggers to work for you, but that doesn't mean that you can't make decisions to increase those odds. And that's what it is in any deck, right? Like in this deck, it's just more, I think, maybe apparent, but in a lot of decks, especially Sakazuki being like a really high skill deck as well, based on like what you need to draw, discard, what you remove, these type of manipulation decisions happen in Nami too. Do you top or bottom with your Spada, especially now in 06? Like, do you actually use your White Snake trigger or keep it to draw a card? Like these type of micro decisions really matter. So it's good for me to hear you say that like these type of decisions can take you there. And as you play more, these become more apparent. Kind of matchup.
I was watching your interview with Ramton, I believe. His name from the East. And he was saying how, like it just takes a lot of reps, and it's so true with Nami. Like you just have to like know what's coming, what to like put to the bottom. Cause like there'll be times where you Spada and you look at your top three and it's Love, Mellow, White Snake, and Gavel. And you're like, those are three amazing cards. But like how important is throwing those to the bottom and looking for a peel off or Kaya? Yeah. And it's like very small decision points that dictate every single game. And that's why I know some people might roll their eyes at this. I do think Nami is one of the, if not the hardest deck in the game to play.
I think, so if you roll your eyes at that, this is my hot take. If you roll your eyes at that, I just don't think you're a good player. I actually think Nami is probably the hardest deck in the game to play. I think not a lot of people can pick it up and play it well. There are so many. Okay, just the other day, I played against a Yamato player where the decision to bottom deck, it was, and so it's actually kind of what you just mentioned here. So I had a Spada into a Kaya, Pilaf, and Gavel. And I'm like, okay, against this deck, I think I can grind out to the point where I can win on my turn. But then the way the game sequence, I had to, based on how many hits I took, it was a bad call because I had to win on my opponent's turn. And so what that means is I put a Kaya, Pilaf, and cards that I need on my turn, I put those at the bottom. So now when I get there with the Deathwing, when I get there with the Gavel, when I get there with whatever trigger, I can't use those cards anymore. And so decisions that you make like this in the beginning of the game dictate how you win in the later game.
Absolutely. And sometimes that can actually bite you pretty bad if you put Kaya's to the bottom, because you're going to be Deathwinking for 2. You pretty much Deathwink for 2 every game. Yeah. And if you're Deathwinking to like Pilaf Kaya or whatever it may be, like Gavel, something else, like, it feels brutal sometimes. So you have to make sure when you do it that it's like the perfect scenario. Yeah, exactly. So I'll tell you what, enough about how I lost. We need to talk about how you won. So talk to me about, your 6 wins, your tournament, like how did that go? Maybe talk about like a matchup or two that you wanted to highlight. So how did that feel going into it? And then we can talk about maybe some more semantics after. Sure. So I did finish 6-3. I think it was 35th out of 385 people. And I started 6-0. So I had such a hot start, but then I totally faded towards the end. But I told my friends, I said, if I see some yellow, if I see some Sakazuki, dodge, RP Law, we can cook. So my tournament started, I went Anel. So my first game was against Anel, and my opening hand had Pilaf and Kaya in it. And I'm like, oh, this is free. Beauty. This is free. This is free. So that one I cooked. And then so I went, my matchups from start to finish were Anel, Kata, Saka, Reiju, which was another one I was trying to dodge. But I won that one. And then I believe it was Kata. And the last 3 I lost were Kata, Saka, and then Yamato were the last 3 I lost. But I got lucky. I said I need to see yellow, see some Sakazukis, and the first 3 matchups of the tournament were all yellow, and then 2 Sakas, and then eventually I saw the Reiju, which I ended up winning. I don't even know how. I kind of just blinked, and then I had no cards left in my deck. No, that is one of those matchups. You know what? We'll get into it in a second. Talk to me about
the yellow matchup. You want to see yellow. You want to see Saka. Why? I've seen so many comments from folks on my channel, folks on the Nami discussion in the Discord, talking about, I'm having trouble with the Kata matchup. I'm having trouble with it now. Look at all these new tools. Big Mom everywhere. Like, what is your approach to the yellow matchup, or maybe just the Kata, maybe just the NL matchup? I think the Yamato matchup is a little bit more unique than just calling it a yellow matchup. But yeah, what's your approach to those matchups?
So Enel is easy because every card in their deck is a brick, unless they play Rush Enel. Everything is a brick. You know, Genatsu, okay, it pops like a Kaya or a Daw's Bones. You got 3 more of those. Yamato, you know, they're not getting full value out of their big bombs, and then the leader does absolutely nothing because you're not attacking them. And Katakuri is interesting because you have a lot of good cards in the matchup. Like Zeph is incredible. Like if you just stick Zeph, most times you're probably winning unless they have the reject in hand. But I find with Katakuri, it is tough because in the back of your head, you're always thinking, oh, if he plays Big Mom, I lose because they can just strip it from life. So it's kind of, in that matchup, got to get to the point where Big Mom doesn't matter. And White Snake too, because when they Big Mom and then you White Snake and attack, you draw and blank everything. So those are definitely the big ones. Kaya, Pilaf really early. Brick Fist is very good in the matchup too. Bounces a lot of great targets. And even Deathwing can bounce a 7-Mom back to hand, which when they play that doesn't do anything either. It's a bad Dawn investment. So those are definitely tips. Mill aggressively early with Gavels, take them back. And by the time they are going to play Big Mom and trash, let's say you got 3 life cards left in deck. By the time they trash it, it doesn't matter. And then you can even just take the 2 on the last swing, draw 2. Maybe you see a rubber band, 4 cards out of life, and then you can just go for it on your turn.
2 things I want to highlight from what you just mentioned here, especially for the viewers. So that Big Mom piece that you mentioned, just to highlight. So Big Mom costing 10, right? So 10 Dawn coming down. Kata and or NL specifically as well, that boost that they get requires 1 Dawn, so that they're just attacking you for 5k, right? It's gonna be 5k, and then whatever's on board, hopefully they don't have a 6k swing. But that's what we're talking about with that White Snake. That White Snake will blank out any further attack that they have. When
I first read it and I first read the card and I saw some people on Twitter saying how good it is, I was like, is it that good? Is it really that good? And then you play with it and you're like, oh my god, this card like might be the best counter in the deck. It's crazy.
Like literally for the turn, crazy.
Yeah,
crazy.
Like you turn yourself into Whitebeard and draw a card for 2 Dawn. It's amazing.
Absolutely insane. And the draw being unconditional is key. And the second piece I want to highlight there, you're kind of talking about sticking Zeph. And now there's a couple of things that kind of stand in the way of this. And I know people will ask this down below. So I know some of the yellow decks aren't playing 9-cost Yamato anymore. So it's the big piece of removal are kind of Gadatsu and Reject. Now, Reject, you get whatever. At least that Reject is killing the Zeph and it's not hitting your 1 life, right? So big win there.
Yeah.
But do you take the hit, you know, in your own play? Do you find that taking the hit early to 4 life is good so that the Gadatsu can't kill the Zeph? Or are you fine playing Zeph and just making them have the Gadatsu? What's your take on that?
Depends what your board looks like. Depends what your board. If you have a Kaya and you can just run the Zeph out, go for it.
Yeah.
But if your board's maybe not as developed, even if there's a Dawn's Bone out, you Zeph that back to your hand, it's fine. But I think you just have to go for it.
Sure.
Taking the card isn't bad. It's not bad at all because it could be a draw 2.
Right.
And then you might even draw like another Zeph.
Right.
So I think just when you have it, go for it. Because, you know, you have to protect your life in the game. Because sometimes giving them the free life against, like, let's say a Katakuri, when they play a Gadatsu, that 1 life, you know, could be the difference later when they decide to Big Mom.
Yeah. And
you could have had an extra life when they go for the Big Mom, but you didn't, just to protect a Zeph. Most times they might have the reject and kill the Zeph, but I think you just have to stick it, especially if there's a Kai on board, because getting, you know, 4-card value out of Zeph is crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely something that I need. Like, maybe it's a bad habit I picked up where I've recently started to try and take the life to protect the Zeph, but maybe I need to now unwire that and go back into my games, and especially against yellow, maybe not do that. Just stick it, try it out. And even especially against yellow and against all matchups, really, before we go into maybe the Sokka matchup and everything, are you going second all the time? Is there any matchup
always second against Katakuri? Always second. And that on that point too, with them killing the Zeph, they got to take up their whole turn most times to kill Zeph.
Right.
Like they got to invest a lot of Dawn into killing it. So sometimes that means they take a turn off. and they don't go big at you with Katakuri.
Sure. Good point there.
And that's why I like second too, because you can Zeph and keep a gavel up.
Yes.
Which is
yes.
nice.
Yes. The one dot is nice there. People get too stuck in the weeds about playing things on curve. With Nami, just I don't know, just have as much Dawn up as possible. If you have some to spare, throw it on a Nami and swing at something, maybe to get cards out of their hand. But yeah. Let's talk about the Sokka matchup. So this is a matchup that I think, I don't know what your take is. I find is 50-50. There's a lot of options that they have on their side. I don't know if I would necessarily call it favored, especially now with like Moria in the deck list too, and with Tashigi giving them like more search options for like Tashigi searching up Houndblaze is actually like really relevant bottom decking your stuff. So give me your take. That's my kind of initial guide there. What's your take on the Sokka matchup?
My take on Sokka is I would rather see Sokka than a lot of other decks in the game. So I do think it is a good matchup for Nami.
Okay.
I guess it is a very skill-intensive deck like Nami, which is tough. And I'll go into one Sokka matchup I played, which was insane. He played that 2-cost event that bottoms 2 1-cost. I think that's what it does.
Hey, yo, what?
So there's that 2-cost event. It's a blue card. It's a 2-cost event. I can't remember the name of it, but it bottoms 2 creatures. And in the Sakazuki matchup, I think I counted he bottomed 9 of my cards, and I still won. Won.
You're crazy. Nah, stop. Before you go any farther, what were your triggers? That's crazy.
So I think my triggers off the start were Impel, and that's all I can remember. I know there was a rubber band in there, maybe. My triggers were pretty godlike, but the way I positioned myself to win the game with the bottoms, with using Buggy to bottom my deck, push those Kayas back up, which can actually really come in handy sometimes. So I think the key in that matchup is if they bottom your Kayas, push them back up with Buggy. And I saw all my Pilafs out of my deck that game and was just countering efficiently. Also, Brickfist bounces the Lucci, bounces the Borsalino. Yeah, you can out-tempo them.
Yeah, and so that's a good point there. A lot of folks, what they'll do is they'll be too afraid to bounce them because they're like, okay, it comes down, they draw another card, or Lucci comes down and they kind of kill 1 to 2 of my characters again. But just the time can be very valuable, because then otherwise, if they don't have those threats, like, what are they going to swing 2K with? Like, they're going to swing 5K with Brand New and Tashigi all game? Like, that's not going to get them anywhere, especially with Whitesnake. That's getting them nowhere.
Although the new Gecko makes that matchup a lot better for them than it used to be. That card's crazy. That card is Nami's nightmare. It's
you just have to hope that when
good.
You just have to hope that when they brand new, like, they're just ditching the Morias, because they can't get Moria off the brand new. So,
but no, that matchup, the way I ended the game was crazy. So on their last turn, because I had the cards in hand to just mill myself out when they attacked.
Okay.
They used that event to bottom 2 of my creatures, and then they 7-cost Porcelino'd. So I put 3 cards at the bottom of my deck, and I still got it with the cards in hand. So I might have this wrong, but I think I have it. So I had a bunch of good cards. I White Snaked. That got me down to 7.
Right.
Gavelled what I drew with White Snake. That's 2. So that got me to 3. Gavelled the other junk card in my hand. That got me to 5. Rubber Band, mill 1, Deathwink, draw 2. And I got through that many cards. It was I think it was like 1 in a million chance to have that kind of hand. It was perfect. But the matchup is tough with A-Cost Gecko now. I would still lean it in Nami's favor.
Yeah. Okay. I guess it's like it's really dependent on if they find Gecko or not. I think like the top end of the deck is really like, it's really muddled into that, because Gecko's such a high value card. Other than that, the deck is a bunch of searchers and 2K counters. I think like really that's what it kind of comes down to. And a lot of cards that get bounced by Brickfist as well, which is nice.
Like bouncing a Lucci back with Brickfist feels so good, and they have nothing on board. Maybe a searcher, but you're countering out of that and killing it with Nami on the back crack. So
that's what I mean. You worried about a searcher? Like, I don't know. You got bigger problems then. Okay. All right. So that's the Sakazuki matchup. So talk to me about Reiju. So now that's not a matchup I played often, but I know that with the synergies of like, they play one character and then they replace it with like a slightly higher cost character. Like they can cheat out a lot of big stuff and build their board out and really like pile through cards. Like they have a lot of cards in hand. So it's really hard to sometimes like kill things on board as well. So what's your approach to that matchup?
It's a tough one. A lot of the times you wish you had their leader ability because it's crazy. But you're really living off your love mellows, your 4K counters, because most times when they drop the 7-cost rush or the 7K rush, they're not putting Dawn on it. So Love Mellow draws you a card, and you got to watch out for the pudding. So try to keep yourself at 5 cards the entire game. Make the pudding bad, which I know is hard to do while, you know, building up a hand size. But the 4K counters, Love Mellows, Gum Gabbles, that's the key to that matchup. And you need to hit life. Like, life needs to be good.
Yeah.
You need to hit the triggers on your, like, when you take a life, and just hope you have the sauce at the end of the game.
Yeah. And look, again, as we said in the beginning, that has to be okay with all of y'all. You cannot be playing this deck and then be mad at the fact that you win off your triggers. Like,
we play Impel Down All-Stars in a deck without an Impel Down leader. We're playing bad cards.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I can't wait till that card gets replaced. I cannot wait till that card gets replaced. I remember my very first game in Nami, I sat down, I'm like, oh, I have 3 Impel Downs and a Kaya. There's so many ways to draw cards here. What do I play first? I play my Impel. My opponent's like, that's not how that works. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. This deck is very different.
But when you hit it out of life, it's the best feeling that you can get playing like Nami in One Piece. It's amazing.
I say I can't wait for it to get replaced, but Bandai will never do it. Come on.
Sorry, quick note on the Reiju matchup. White Snake is big too, because when they judge and they do all that stuff, sometimes they play a lot of 5K bodies in that deck that a lot of times, again, they're not attaching Dawn to. So the White Snake is just a great setup counter card on their turn. It can really mess up their map. And like, one thing to note, like White Snake, you have to think of it like a card where you may not be able to fully counter out the first attack or use a lot of resources for the first attack, but then they can't really do that with the second attack. Like, their second attack then requires that many more resources if you like double White Snake, and then the third attack is probably impossible, right? So you use a lot of cards for maybe the first, maybe the second attack, but then you kind of prevented that third one, that fourth one, or whatever it might be. So White Snake is big for that. So the big one that I want to talk about here, actually, well, we can go into a Moria matchup, but you didn't really face it. No.
Yamato. That is, I think, when a lot of people look at it, double attack. A lot of times you play against Yamato and they just take their 3 Dawn on their turn 2, attach it, and they're like, hate you for double. Like, what is your take on this matchup?
It's so weird. It's a matchup where you read Yamato leader and you're like, oh, Nami has no chance. You just have no chance. But the more you think and the more you play around it, the more you think about it, the only one I did lose to, or the only one I saw I did lose to, I think I got down to 3 or 2 cards left in my deck. It was so close. But Gavel is huge because they're investing a lot of Dawn into the Yamato swing. So if you can just like Gavel and then Rubber Band or something like that, you can invest 2 Dawn to waste their whole turn. That's huge. And you have to play around Hody and the Banish. That's all you can do.
Onami is I don't know, that makes me want to just turn on. Like, every time I see Onami resolved and I can't counter out of it, it makes me want to leave the game. Like,
what makes that matchup hard too for me, especially when you're playing against it, is knowing when to peel off, because this is a big Dawn investment. Let's say they win the die roll and they chose probably first. I think they're taking every single time, and you want to peel off, but Hody's probably coming down next turn. You just feel like you're losing so much value, and then you might find yourself in a position where you might have to take the double attack because your hand might be, a Love Mellow, a peel off, and like a Death Link or something like that. So that can be tricky too.
Hody Jones, like, so many folks like forget the fact that it tap downs 2 characters or 2 of your Dawn. That is a huge, huge piece of like value taken out of that one turn.
It makes it a nightmare to play against sometimes. But a lot of times why you're favored against Yamato is they really don't have a searcher for it. So if they just like don't see it, you're probably going to win.
Yep. That, and so Hody Joe. So good point on the searcher, by the way. So a lot of times they kind of just have to naturally draw it. If they have it, they have it. I find another threat in that deck. I don't know how many times you played against it. 9-cost Zoro. Big one.
Oh, if they stick that, it's just you're probably gonna lose. You're probably gonna lose.
Okay. All right. I've seen some players be like, I've had like 2 people tell me it's not that bad. I'm like, I don't think you've ever played against this card.
It's pretty bad.
This card is pretty bad. It's 3 Dawn to just take. I think it's pretty much, imagine you had a card that said, I'll pay 3 Dawn to eliminate 1 to 2 of your life. That's it. Like, that's all that card says, right?
It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
It's pretty amazing, but pretty niche right now. Doesn't feel like that playable. So it's nice that they're not playing it. But if they play it, not out of the realm of possibility, it just scoop them up. You know, scoop them up.
Yeah. You better hope that I don't know, by the time if they play that on curve, I don't know.
You just need gavels and hope they have like 8 cards left in your deck.
Yeah, you better hope that all those Deathwinks are coming to you with some gavels or something. I don't know, but okay.
Deathwink a big card in that matchup too, because they'll throw again 5 Dawn on Yamato. Deathwinking, even when it's not drawing you cards, is straight value. Yeah,
right? Because you don't want to take that double attack when you don't have to, right? It's not one of those matchups where you want to force triggers, especially, remember, a lot of people forget this text. That second paragraph of text says, if you have 3 or less life, your opponent has 3 or less life, they can then start attaching Rested Dawn on the characters. Don't give them free, don't just be like, oh, I'm going to take the hit for, no, don't take a hit from the Yamato. Stay 4 and above.
And if somehow you stick Zeph in that matchup, you're probably winning.
Zeph is really good, yes, because they don't play removal. They're very aggressive, right? They have to Hody Jones it to really get it. And if they swing into it, I mean, I'll take a swing into it, honestly. I don't know. Like if I'm stuck into it and I need to save up stuff for the Yamato swing and they swing a Hody into it, like take it, whatever, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But what are some of is there maybe a tip or two that you would have for this matchup? Do you mulligan differently? Are you, just because it is a relatively aggressive deck, are you still mulliganing for Kaya, or are you kind of finding hands with Gavel and you're like, this is fine?
You got to find Gavel. Gavel's so big. I mean, Kaya is always your first priority, and you just kind of have to make it work if you don't have Gavel. You just have to be very patient with the Kayas and the Pilafs. But if you don't see Gavel in that matchup, you're probably just losing. It's the most efficient counter for you. It's so good. And even Spada I find is big too, because you can't afford to draw junk in that matchup. So you have to get rid of all the bad cards in your deck. Yeah.
Rearranging with that is so key. I think just as a PSA to folks, it's okay to bottom deck cards. Don't feel like you just have to make the top. So many folks forget you can just take those cards, put them to the bottom. It's okay.
Especially if you play Buggy, right? Like Buggy, you're putting, let's say 3 cards, to the bottom. You play Buggy. Well, now they're, 7 cards up if there was a good card you left on top. So
exactly. Or hopefully good. 7, maybe 8 cards up, if you break, but hopefully 7. But okay, so that's the Yamato matchup. Zeph's still pretty good. Hopefully you can abate some early swings. Moria, what's your experience with the new value menace? This deck, this is a leader, let me tell you.
Nami. I see lots of Namis on Twitter saying it's actually pretty even. It feels a little more advantaged in their favor. It's definitely winnable because White Snake is probably your best card in that matchup. But definitely leans in the favor of Gecko. You just have to be, I don't even know what the words I'm looking for right now. You just have to hope your White Snakes are good. Hopefully you have to Impel down on your hand. Perona hits it. I find actually taking first in that matchup sometimes is really good. Being aggressive with your Kaya early, getting down to 4 cards, then start White Snaking. That's pretty good too.
Right.
But you have to be very careful. I think Spada's early are the key in that one too. You got to make sure your bottom deck has a lot of good cards.
Yep. Yeah. I think I agree with kind of that first section you were talking about. I don't know if I agree if this matchup is even. I don't know. There is a lot of value that they get out of stuff. It feels like if you kill stuff, it means nothing. So that kind of just negates a passive advantage you get out of Nami, where sometimes you'll just swing into things to get cards out of their hand, but they'll just take it. They'll be like, yeah, okay, kill it. I'll just bring it back. You know what I mean? I'll get the on play again, Any deck that puts out bodies not from their hand, anything that every time they cheat something out, it's just not good for Nami. Yeah.
It's just not good.
Yeah, exactly. Is there another matchup that you find that you want to discuss kind of in OPO6? We kind of went over yellow, Yamato and everything, Sakazuki, Moria. Is there one that really sticks out to you that maybe is extremely unfavored, that's maybe newer or has a new tech?
RP Law. That deck is horrendous to play against. And Red Zoro. Red Zoro still sucks, but Red Zoro does not feel as unwinnable as RP Law now.
Yeah. Red Zoro, at least you have the White Snakes.
And they're bottoming your cards.
Yes.
But again, White Snake in the matchup, huge. Not unwinnable by any means, but very hard to win.
I mean, hey, if against Law, if all 5 of my triggers draw me 2 cards, I don't see how I'm losing that game. But I had a Law player at my locals try to convince me that it's not that bad. I'm like, no, stop. That's cold.
It's bad. It's pretty bad.
If you're telling me it's not that bad, you're bad to lose to those Nami players. There's no way. Yeah. Like I'm not gonna get. They're not giving it to you. Okay, like you have to try and work to lose that matchup. But at least with the what I will say is, at least in my experience with the value that Sokka has, the aggression that Yamato has, and the recursion that Moria has, not a lot of folks are playing Law because they. I think especially if Lucci is still in the meta.
Weekend in Toronto. It did not have a good weekend in Toronto.
Not at all. Not at all. I was going to say the conversion was pretty bad, but there are some truthers out there in Toronto. I don't know what it's like at your locals, but there are some Law truthers out there, which really hurts me. So
yeah, no, there definitely was a lot of them, but I don't think I saw that many at the top tables. I could be wrong.
Sure. Okay. And correct me here. The winner was Kata, right? In your event?
Yes. Kata versus Gecko in the finals. And Kata won.
Okay. Yeah. A little bit of life manipulation there.
Yeah.
Do you find any maybe particular card right now, maybe out of OPO6, is highly problematic for us? Maybe in like the top decks, like maybe is there a card in yellow?
Perona for sure.
Perona. Okay, yeah. So the black 4-cost 5K
deck is very tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because just making you discard if your hand's good always sucks. Whenever that event that Sakazuki player was playing, and it wasn't an off-meta card, I think it's just like pretty niche. I think they only play one or two of it, but that one sucks. I can't remember the name of the card. Trying to think of other cards that just aren't great for Nami right now. I mean, the O Nami is really bad in yellow.
Yeah.
Because they can trigger it, kill Akaya, kill Zeph, play it, banish your life. Like on top of playing around Hody, you're also playing around that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they can do both in one turn.
Yeah, I find a lot of the mid-range stuff to be really more like problematic now. A lot of the stuff that you're seeing on like turn 4, maybe turn 3, like from your opponent, is a lot more impactful. Whereas before it was kind of just like, if I can bounce it, I'm fine. Like if I can return it, whereas like it kind of comes down, it has that immediate value, or like even if it comes back next turn, like it's not even like you're buying time. Like the card is so good that like it's a problem that you're seeing it. Find a lot of those cards like that right now.
Definitely that Perona is a menace. That card is so hard to play around and against. It's so tough.
Okay. And what are you thinking about with the future of Nami going into 06? Like 06 just started. Do you find that there's going to be some type of evolution? Obviously, you know, Sakazuki's going to be banned in 07 for us, so we're still having to deal with that. But do you find that the meta is still developing? Are we kind of set where we are? What are you kind of seeing in terms of trends?
This is the worst Nami has felt since before the Whitebeard ban.
Okay.
It feels like a very tough deck to play around right now because it feels like there's so many good cards. Because, you know, there's the new pudding. And correct me if I say the name wrong. A card that I've seen a lot of Rejuice play is, the card I should have mentioned, by the way, Perona and the Gion, I think it's called.
Yeah.
The one that makes you put an event to the bottom. Like, that card sucks. If they stick that, there's not much you can do. But I think Nami is in a not so great spot right now, although it is in a great spot because it's good against Saka. It is good against Katakuri. It is good. You know, those are probably the top 2 decks right now. So that's pretty good. And then I think in OPO7 with the new Lucci and the new Bonnie, I think Nami gets really good because I think it's going to have some great matchups into those as well.
Yeah.
And I don't think the list is changing that much right now. I mean, I've seen like that 7-cost Croc list floating around. I know there is someone I think out east who's been talking a lot with it.
I'm actually gonna get a little conversation with them going on Saturday, so we're gonna hear the tech. It's not a list I'm a big fan of, but I have to be open to things. There's no Death Winks in it, but from my experience with Mill in Magic, I have had to swallow my ego so many times to win games that at this point I'm so happy to be wrong. Prove me wrong. I'm happy to tell people I don't believe in this, and I want you to prove me wrong because I just want to win more games. Yeah.
I just personally, in a meta where Sakazuki exists, I don't see how you can get away playing that card. Although that user did make a good point on Twitter. It's amazing into yellow, and Katakuri I think was the most popular deck. So maybe more power to them.
Yeah. And there's another user. I'm forgetting their Twitter handle right now. They play like a more control version of the list too, where they're playing like a lot more bottom decks too,
like red rocks and stuff. I've seen that one. I think. Yeah.
I had a BMer at locals. videos going up later today where they play Nami, and there's like 3 Nami players at locals outside of them, like me included, and they'll play Pudding in the main board too. And I'm like, we need to stop teching for each other. This isn't it.
Yeah, I
this
know.
Isn't
yeah,
it.
it's terrible.
Stop that.
My buddy sent me a photo of that blue Arlong from OP1 today, and he said he's going to put it in a Sakazuki deck. I said,
put that away.
I said, I'll switch decks if you do that.
Yeah, put that away. I'm tired. I'm tired of these blue players hating other blue players. Okay, we have bigger enemies. All right, we need to focus in. All right, we need to focus in. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess you were kind of talking about 07 there. So I want to touch on that a little bit. I know that there is. Now I haven't looked into it too much because I know, and we can go into this a bit of it. I do have some criticisms with how the game at large, and one of them right now is just like the lack of the unity, and I think like resources makes it really hard to find deck lists and find tournament results. I find like you have to go to like 5 different websites to do this. So I think there's like a one-cost searcher now that people are talking about maybe being a replacement for Buggy because it gets 7 warlords or something.
Yes, I think I saw that list on One Piece Top Decks, and I mean I looked at it and is it better than the package that we run right now? I don't know.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like honestly, I think Buggy just getting Deathwink is huge. Like I think that's a big one, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I know a lot of Nami players on Twitter aren't crazy about Buggy. It's kind of like one of the first go-to things they cut. I love it. Finding the Brickfist can win you games. Find Brickfist, bounce Nami, play Nami.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Bounces Lucci's back. In my list, I'm playing, I know a lot of lists are different. I just put the 4 White Snakes in. I cut 2 Apis. I cut a Zeph and 1 Buggy. The Buggy search just feels too valuable. I know a lot of people cut 2 Apis, 2 Buggy, and then run 4 Zeph, but I think 3 Buggy is too good. It's also 1 for 1. Takes a card out of your deck.
Yeah. And you kind of have to play into it, right? So a lot of folks so I know myself, for my own locals, I take out 2 Brickfist and I'll play Nojiko. Because a lot more purple players at my locals, so I need more answers to 5-cost cards. But that does reduce the amount of targets I have for Buggy. So that's kind of the personal decision I make there. Yeah. But regardless, Buggy does have value.
I love it. I love it. Finding Deathwink late is crazy because you might not have any cards. Like you might, for whatever reason, have a Buggy and something that's not very good, and you go search up the Deathwink, and then maybe the other cards are Rubber Band. You Rubber Band and Deathwink. It's 3 cards out of your deck. That could be enough to win the game.
Yeah, exactly. So in 07, you kind of had a brief mention of it. What's your experience with 07 so far? Have you taken a look at it? Do you have any glance? Like, what are we looking forward in the future? You mentioned it briefly.
So I don't play the sim at all. I only play in paper, and I don't know a ton about OP7. I've seen what some of the leaders can do. I know, I think what the ones I've seen so far is the green Bonnie, the black Lucci, the blue Boa.
There's blue Boa. Yeah.
And Nami looks great into all of those because they all look pretty slow. I think the meta slows down a lot for sure next set. So that's why I'm getting really excited. And I'm still going to keep grinding Nami through this set too because I love the deck and it's just going to get better.
Yeah, exactly. And hey, again, as we mentioned all throughout this kind of episode here, if yellow's everywhere, Nami's eaten, right? I guess like going into a larger discussion about this, because I think Nami provides a really interesting angle to interact with the game, right? Like you're really playing a completely different plan than anyone else is doing. Yeah. So with that unique perspective, I wanted to get your thoughts on the One Piece TCG as a whole. You really like the game. You're kind of taking a pause from Magic or just kind of playing that casually to focus in on it. What are the big things that you love about the game, and what are some of the cons? Because I know a lot of people, I will briefly mention as kind of a lead on, there's a lot of conversations about pricing, accessibility, and kind of a lack of diversity in leaders, like if especially with the Marco that just got released or revealed, folks are talking about the second coming of Sakazuki. So what are your thoughts on, again, pros and cons, some of the things that are developing in the game right now?
So to start off with pricing, I play Magic. I'm not complaining about the pricing at all. No fetch lands, in every single deck. No shock.
Also, their pinkies up in our elitism, like.
Yeah, pricing not an issue, and I mean the availability of the game can be tough, I guess. Excuse me, but I don't think it's that bad as everyone says. At least here. So I'm from Ontario.
Yeah.
And, GTA area, Toronto area. And I have no issue getting cards at all. But that being said, I don't buy a lot of cards. So I play Nami. And, the game I think is great. I understand why people hate yellow. Losing to yellow sucks because sometimes I'll play other decks just for fun.
Yeah.
And it can suck, but yellow can also suck sometimes. Like if they just like don't see the triggers and whatnot. So that's why I always tell my friends, I say my position and my thoughts on this game are incredibly skewed because like yourself, we play Nami. We're doing our own game. It's not really even One Piece. Well, it is One Piece, but you know what I mean? Like we're not playing the conventional game style. So as a Nami player, I think the game's fine. The Sakazuki ban I get, but I mean, I don't think I'm not a big fan of banning leaders outright. The Whitebeard one, I understood totally because that was gatekeeping the game. I don't think Sakazuki gatekeeps the game that hard. Does a little bit, but not that hard. I think the game's in a great state. I love it. But I definitely do think free triggers are a problem. Should always be taxed with a card or whatever it may be.
I'm going to touch on that. That's actually interesting. I've never thought about that. I do want to touch on the leaders though. So this is in a vacuum. I will agree with you that Whitebeard was oppressive. In a vacuum, I find it problematic that the leaders can be banned or what's the word for it when they're reworded?
Eroded? I think
eroded. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. I find that problematic. I think that's a central game piece and just changing the I think erratas are generally problematic and look, I'm spoiled, right? Like Mark Rosewater and everyone from Magic the Gathering, they have big problems with errataing cards, right? They want the player experience first and foremost to be universal, right? They want to be able to open packs and they've really only errated, I think, once in modern Magic right now. They've errated once. But I think errating so early, I think gives me fear in terms of the lack of foresight from card designers.
It definitely sets a bad precedent.
Like banning leaders is one thing, but I think errating the leaders is a big negative for me. I don't think that's where this game needs to go. Did Sakazuki needs to change? That's not my conversation. My thing is I stand hard against errating leaders. Errating cards, I don't know. I don't think that's good either. I think you just print better cards or you just print cards that maybe not are better, but answer that card. Like, I think that's all you do, but I'm not a fan of erratas. Triggers, though, that's interesting what you said. Triggers without tax. So are you talking about where a trigger will just say, oh, play this card? Or
yeah, I don't think that's fair. I think that creates for a bad play pattern for the game. And I think that is going to cause people to leave the game because it's so frustrating. I know I've seen people in my play group like really get upset about it. And I kind of get it. It sucks. Like, it punishes you for playing the game.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like you're just playing and then all of a sudden, 2 triggers later and you can't get around Masanji or whatever it may be. But I don't think, yellow's like a problem or anything.
Yeah.
I think it's very beatable.
Yeah.
Because I guess up until now, with Yellow Katakuri having a stellar weekend, it's never been the best deck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even I guess with Sakazuki here, I'm sure most people would say Sakazuki is still better than Katakuri.
Yeah. And I think like there's a lot of micro factors that I find that a lot of folks aren't able to take advantage of. And again, I think this might be and this is my own personal take, so feel free to agree or disagree, but coming from Magic where you have a game that's developed for so long, you have Magic Online, Magic Arena, Paper, sometimes online events. You have so many different formats as well. So many different angles that people come from to a singular game to solve a problem. Right. And people have these perspectives. They're like, okay, I can solve this problem. I can deal with aggro this way because I play Commander and that's how I deal with it. I can deal with control this way because I play Pioneer and I deal with it this way. Yeah. Like there's so many different angles. And I find that right now, because there's only one format, there is a lack of accessibility in cards in the sense that a lot of folks aren't buying into, they're not buying playsets of Queen because, that might not be the most accessible for them right now. And so not a lot of people have access to just playing the game for free. And like you said, you may not want to play the sim. It may not be an attractive thing for you. Yeah. It may not be something that you're into. And that's perfectly fine, right? Like, because a lot of folks, when they're playing Magic Online, Magic Arena, those are clients that have digital backing. There are tournaments on there. There is a reason to invest into it. But I think there's a lot more solving that I think this meta can do. I think there's a lot of Sakazuki players that left because of the banning and they just would rather play another leader. So I think Sakazuki is still good right now. I think it's still really good right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's being underexplored. I don't know. It just feels like the yellow dominance right now is the fact that a lot of people are just overhyped on Big Mom's ability. Sakazuki, I think Sakazuki's still busted. I don't know.
I think Sakazuki's the best deck. I still think it's the best deck by far. Yellow did get a lot of help to beat Sakazuki now.
Right.
But I still think Sakazuki is the best deck. What a great player can do with that deck in their hands is pretty amazing. Like, you can cook. You can cook so hard. Sometimes when I go and I play a regular deck and I play against my buddy who's pretty good at Sakazuki, I'm just like, how do I win? Like, I don't even know how to win. Like, it's so good sometimes. Yeah, that's why I like Nami, because it's pretty good in this Sakazuki.
Yeah. But even still, right? Like, with all the searching that they do, the draw, discard, like the amount of actions that they get to do in a singular game really just lends that high skill, right? Like, you can make all the right decisions and then all of a sudden you decide to discard the wrong card. I think the high skill Sakazuki players, like, they're going to get rewarded. Why they banned it,
because the high skill Sakazuki players are so good that at these major tournaments, it kind of makes the game uninteresting. I remember we were watching Worlds at my local game store. We had it on the TV they had there, and Sakazuki mirror came on the screen and like 7 people just walked away. So no one wants to watch it anymore. It definitely can become very uninteresting in the game for sure.
Yeah. And I think part of that is card diversity. I wanted to ask you about this. Like, I know recently they talked about how they wanted to do a reprint set, right? And that may be, that may not affect us as Nami players. Again, our deck being relatively cheap. Sure, our mellows are going to become more accessible. But I want to take this angle, from a One Piece player's perspective where, they might be coming from Yu-Gi-Oh! Where there aren't really expensive decks. But all of a sudden, I'm sitting here, I'm going to a local game store. I'm going to play Magic at face-to-face as well. And I'm sitting there with my $1,200 deck being like, this is normal. I'm sitting across a $3,000 deck. Yeah. Like, that's normal. Yeah. And that's probably a problem. But this is a game that's been around for years. And this is the format I want to play. I could go play another format that's cheaper. So I still have that option. But One Piece has one option. And it is you got to buy play sets of Queens, play sets of Borsalinos, play sets of whatever. What's your take on accessibility? Should they, how should they do reprints? Is it a problem that folks can't really buy cards if they're just getting into TCG, coming from Pokemon and it's cheaper? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm all for reprints. Make the game more accessible. The more people to make it play, bigger the community becomes. You want to play with some of your friends that might play a little more casually and don't want to spend that amount of money on Queens, but then you just beat them every time because it's not fun. They're not playing with good cards. So I think I'm all for reprints. I've never been a big collector for cards. So if the value of the kit I got for top 64 went down to $100 tomorrow, I don't care. I'm not losing sleep. Right. So I think open it up, reprints for sure, make the game more accessible.
I think with that, so I agree wholeheartedly. I agree. Accessibility is king. I understand that these are sometimes they're trading card games. So by that notion, they're kind of collectible card games as well, CCGs as well. Yeah. There's an element of price that has to be there. I get it. Yeah, Capitalism is everywhere. Fine. Whatever. Okay. That's not the lowest hanging rung argument I want to make here. But I think it's frustrating. And I guess I don't really know where I'm taking this point, but it's frustrating to see products, I think, like the Nami collector set that's coming out. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. Pre-orders are out right now, and it's 4 Namis that I think it's like a Luffy, 2 Namis, the 1-cost Namis, and I think a Chopper, and the Namis are serialized, and the product is pre-ordering for $500. And just the other day, I had someone talk to me about how they went they split for 8-9 or something like that at a recent event in Toronto, and they sold a card that they won for $7,000 or something like that. I'm like,
crazy.
Hey, yo, what do you mean? Yo,
good on you. Good on you if you're selling a card for that much.
That's what I mean. I'm like, yo, these are the events I should go to. If I go to a Magic event, that's such terrible EV. I'm going to a Magic event and winning and flexing. That's it. That's all I get. I go to a One Piece event and do okay and win $7,000? What the hell? Why am I at home?
I was telling my parents because one of my closest friends, my friend who got me into the game, came fourth place. I think it was fourth or fifth. Daniel Taddeo. He's playing Katakuri. Shout out. And someone came up to him after realizing he had top 8'd it and offered him $13,000 on the spot. And for the prizing, and I think that was a low ball. He said no. So I mean,
give me that right now, yo.
Yeah, like, it's pretty crazy. But I think a point we can make on this is, in terms, comparison to Magic here. I know we keep going back to Magic, but it's just like my, bar that I use. That's a comparison you're going to get on this channel. That's fine. You can brew in Magic. You can brew a deck, go to locals, do good. There's no room for brewing in One Piece. If you brew a deck in One Piece, it sucks. If you're playing purple, you need the queens. If you're playing yellow, you need the 7-cost moms. Like, there's no space to play without them. And if you are winning without them, you're good at the game. I don't know. But it feels like One Piece, the One Piece deck design is very linear in terms of what the card pool is. And I guess that is because it's such a new game. So I don't think you can blame them for that. But it definitely feels like that might be an issue driving up the card prices. Make a bunch of good cards, make it the game brewable. I don't know. Yeah.
And I think one thing is, like, they have such a focus on making, okay, I guess people might harp on me for this, but they have such a focus on making unique cards that I think making analogs or almost near functional reprints are probably the way to do this. Like, sure, Queen is really good, but make a Queen with like a better or worse trigger. That way, I guess, like, I don't know, maybe the stat line's slightly different, but like, make it similar. You know what I mean? Like,
developing a card game seems very, very difficult.
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially to keep everybody happy. It seems difficult.
Completely. And again, all my experience of Magic and Mark Rosewater and 30 years of design are telling me, to argue against a game that's been out for like 2 years. So I get it. I'll get off my high horse. But what are some of the big positives that you have for the game? I know we talked about a lot of negatives. What are you excited about when you tell other people?
Is so good. The community of One Piece is so good. It's the best card game community I've ever been a part of. Like, I've got some pretty close friends now that I've met through the game, within the past 8 months or so, and we hang out every week. We play cards, have a couple beers, and hang out. It's the best. Even at the event in Toronto, the 401 regional, it was awesome. Like, I think I played against one opponent who was like, but everyone else was super nice at the top tables, didn't give off a bad vibe. Sometimes Magic tournaments that I've been to, it's like, oh wow, it's a little scummy. It can be a little scummy sometimes, but One Piece is awesome. It seems like it's heading in the right direction. And I think time will tell. I think there are, online events can be a little fishy sometimes, and that's like an accessibility thing. I think if the game invests in a digital client, which I also wanted to touch on, that might be abated. There's a lot of cheating allegations and a lot of ways where you can't really do triggers properly. There's like maybe 1 or 2 triggers in the game that are really awkward digitally, especially in yellow. But I think ultimately it's okay. Like, ultimately right now, I think you're right. The scene is really good. I've met a lot of friendly people, a lot of great people that come from, I find a lot of people come from different TCGs as well. Like, they bring in their own experience, and that's really nice. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, this is like my deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! This is like my deck in Pokemon or whatever it might be. Which is awesome.
Yeah. And they bring their own experiences from there. What do you think? There's 2 more big things I want to touch on. The first one, the last one is going to be about Nami again, but the first one is going to be about the digital client. What's your take on Bandai doing a digital client? The only reason I say this is because the Dragon Ball TCG recently got one.
I've heard.
So
I've heard.
I think, in my opinion, I'll just be upfront here. I think without a digital client, this game dies. That's my take. I think accessibility it's hard to do in paper with all the harping that I did and you did, whatever it might be. It's really hard to do this on demand in paper. A lot of these sets are being designed years in advance. They're being printed so far in advance. It's hard to predict some of the things that happen. With the digital environment, it might be a little easier. You give folks different formats, different ways to play, weekly events, like whatever it might be, different ways to engage people. I think a official digital client might be the way to go.
Yeah, I think it definitely has to be coming, because I think, you know, in terms of the game's growth, I think it's the fastest growing TCG right now. I could be wrong. I think I heard that in the video somewhere, so I don't know. But I think definitely getting an online client is good, because some people don't like the sim. I don't play the sim because I don't have a lot of time for it. And I've never been a big fan of card games online. I think the main attraction for me is I get to go and play with them.
Yeah.
But I think you definitely need to develop an online client for sure. Client base or clientele, whatever it's called. Sorry, for sure. I think that would only grow your game. Like, I don't feel like there's any negatives that can come from it, especially if you're doing online tournaments.
Yeah, exactly. I think online tournaments are like the next big thing for this game too, because there's just like especially for Magic, like there's a lot of arguments about, you know, the issue with pro play and Magic, but there's a lot of ways that you can access it through digital play, right? Like if you don't have a local game store near you, or I don't know, you're on vacation, you want to play some One Piece, you can play it digitally too, right? Like there's a lot of, and the sim does that too. So like, look, shout out to Batsu Games for making the sim. I don't want to downplay the work that, you know, he's doing for this game. He's honestly single-handedly probably carrying this game right now, giving a lot of folks the option to. But I think the digital client, like, I think there's a lot of people out there that want to try this game for a lot lower of a price. And they want to win some with it, and the sim just doesn't provide that. Also, for Nami players, there are a lot of interactions that you cannot do on the sim because he can't code it. It's a nightmare to code. Like, you can't cast Impel down like for free. Yeah, and that can, like, when you game some, like, sometimes you need to draw 2 off the Deathwing, and like maybe you that's your draw for turn. Yeah, and then you have Deathwing Impel down. The amount of games where I've won where that's happened is crazy. Like, that needs to be able to happen. You need to be able to get junk out of your hand like that. Yeah, exactly. Like there's a lot of things that you can't do on the sim, and I think a digital client would solve that. But the last question I want to ask you, since Nami is the most unique deck in this game, it seems that the game is going to be focused around combat and leaders and attacking triggers, whatever. What's your take on alt win conditions in this game? Should there be another version of Nami? Should there be another way to win the game where maybe you assemble some cards and then it says I win? Or should there be a fixed Nami, a better Nami? Well, whatever it might be. Alt win cons in the One Piece TCG.
I feel like it's easy to say yes, and I think it's easy to say no to this, depending on how you feel about a deck like Nami. But I feel like you can do anything as long as it's balanced. I think that's all it comes down to. Like, Nami feels very balanced. Like, you can, like, lose to anything and you can beat anything. Right. So I think you would need to balance. If there's another way to do it, I don't know how you do it. Right. But you need to be able to balance it somehow. You just can't make it too good, because I know an issue with Nami, I've seen people say on Twitter and YouTube and stuff, is kind of holding blue back. Like, you have to design every blue card around, okay, would this break Nami? You know, interesting. Okay. Like, for example, what's the one card that's banned? I forget his name. That draws 2 and trashes 1. Right, Kabaji. Excuse me. Yeah. That card's insane in Nami, and they had to ban it. And but that card would be awesome in, like, a bunch of other blue decks, I'm sure. So you have to be careful with the cards you print, because it feels like if Nami, for whatever reason, becomes the best deck, that could get really toxic really fast. For a lot of other people. What I will say, me and you, no, for a lot of other people. I'll take it. Hey, Kabaji, yo, when you get your Kabaji train growing, that card is insane. That card is insane in the unlimited queue on the sim. But what I will say to counter that is there have been a lot of cards. I wish I could call out Bandai on this, but I will scream to the heavens when it happens, when they leader lock certain cards, and I'm sitting there like, oh, this is done for Nami. I know this was done for Nami, right? Like, they'll have a draw ability or a buff ability or something, and they'll be like, if your leader is X, I'm like, oh, I don't know what you're doing with this one. This is not a Nami card. But so I think there are ways in the game to balance it, but I think you're right, right? Like, absolutely. Like, leader locking is also, in that point, negative to the other blue leaders, right? So I don't think they want to overtly print as long as your leader isn't Nami. I don't think they want to print that line of text. Nami makes blue weird, because they have to keep every draw 2 card or every draw this card in mind when they, print it, in case it's too good in Nami.
Right. Exactly. Okay. All right. A little bit of discussion around alt win cons and everything. So as we approach, honestly, as we approach this final section in the episode here, I wanted to ask you again, and you may have gone over it as well. Final thoughts on Nami, OP06, the future of the deck, whatever it might be. Talk to the audience about it.
Deck is a blast to play. Deck is super frustrating to play, but once you learn how to play it, it becomes fun.
Right.
Because when I first started playing it, I thought it was the biggest piece of junk I've ever seen in the TCG, and now it's my favorite card game deck I've ever played anywhere, in any game. I think Nami's fine right now. I definitely think if there's like an S, A plus A tier kind of situation,
sure,
it's an A. It's an A because it preys on the great matchups and just like loses to the really bad ones a lot sometimes.
Which is a great place to be. That's a great place to be.
Yeah. I mean, I think the deck is sweet. I think winning with Nami is the best feeling in One Piece. Like you just feel like everything clicks. It feels so good. So I think the deck is awesome. I think it gets even better in OP07 given the new decks that come out.
Yep.
So I think now it's like a good time to learn it because you're going to be playing Nami against a bunch of hard matchups, and that will just like strengthen your ability with the deck. And I hope they print new stuff for it soon. I mean, we got White Snake is an amazing addition, but it's like a common or an uncommon. Give us a new rare. Give us something. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like I want like something new that's spicy to put in the deck. But I think the deck is in a solid place. Rewards tight gameplay. It's very rewarding to play. Yeah. I think that's why I love it the most, because when I win with it, it feels way better than when I pick up my Whitebeard deck and win with Whitebeard.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I think it's still a valuable skill of a deck to learn. I think the deck really, like, so a lot of folks will argue that, you know, Nami doesn't work on the same axis, so I don't learn anything by playing it. I can learn, like, if I play it, I can learn to beat it or something. But no, I think
kind of a little bit.
Yeah. So I think Nami provides you a lot of understanding about value, when to swing in, dawn management. There's a lot of things, micro lessons that you learn from the deck that can be applied to other decks. Like, when should I take a hit? When, like, how should I spread out my dawn? How should I use my dawn on my turn versus my opponent? How should I use my counters? Really teaching a lot about value and what is good on your board.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that you can apply to other decks there. But yeah, I think
I'll pick up other decks and I'm like, I'm just not very good at this game. I don't know how to play the game properly.
Yeah. Hey, every deck has a learning curve, right? Like not all decks are, you know, turn your brain off and log, right? So
But I think the thing that keeps me coming back to Nami and not wanting to put it away is that it's so fun to play.
Yes, it's
so fun to play.
Like when it's the comebacks are so good, right? Like when you draw the right sequence you need, like, oh, my last trigger was a draw 2, let's go. And then
it's like, so fun. I love it.
Yeah, it's I think especially like the craziest sequence I had was in 05. I think I drew 10 cards in a turn, and I needed we mentioned it briefly, the other one cost 2K that used to be in the deck. It looked for Apis. Yeah. You needed Apis for it, but it was absolutely insane. It was like 2 Pilaf, some Kayas, and Apis to find other stuff. It was that's the type of stuff that goes crazy. That's like a fifth. Yeah, that's a fifth of or no, you're going through 40 cards. Yeah, so a fourth of your deck in a turn, which can be huge percentage value. But yeah. All right. Well, Matt, thank you for joining me on this call today. Plug yourself out here, like for other folks that want to find you on socials, ask you any questions, whatever it might be. I'm gonna have your links down below, but talk to us. How do we reach you if we want to?
So my handle on Twitter is all caps GTA_Nami. Nami isn't in all caps, just the GTA. I'm always tweeting about Nami stuff there. I recently just like made a new Twitter because I wanted to make it more geared towards Nami because I got a bunch of retweets and stuff. So you can DM me there. I'm on my phone a lot all day. So you can DM me questions there. I love just like bouncing ideas off too. Yeah. And that's pretty much the only place I really talk about Nami. I don't play the sim a whole lot, really ever. Yeah. So there, and I want to shout out all of my boys. The Shack Pirates. That's what we call our play group. We call ourselves the Shack Pirates because our buddy's dad built a shack in his backyard to have all the dads over for beers, but we kind of took it over with One Piece. So we kind of claim it like we were pirates. So the Shack Pirates, my buddy Daniel Taddeo, who made top 4, crazy. And yeah, great play group. Big, like, are keeping me playing this game because they're a bunch of good dudes, and keep playing Nami. It's fun, rewarding. Great deck.
Perfect.
Great deck.
Perfect. All right, and that's a great note to end things off. For everyone watching this video, let me know what you want to see more of. If you want to see more conversations like this, or let me know what you thought about this conversation today. What are some of your thoughts around Crocodile, the state of the game, and just what you need to be playing in Nami to beat the players that are trying to beat Nami, everything in between, whatever it might be. Let me know in the comment section down below. But thanks everyone for joining us today. Matt, thank you for joining me on this video. And until next time, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I don't know how to end videos, so we're just going to call it the end right there.